This is WFYI News Now. It's April 21st, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, the debate over controversial language this session to criminalize people sleeping on public property. The latest on the homelessness crisis in Indianapolis. A federal judge does not grant a temporary restraining order to 7 international students whose visas were revoked. And Indiana Humanities is one of several local organizations impacted by federal funding cuts.
This is not just about Indiana Humanities. There are many organizations in Indiana who are experiencing unexpected federal funding cuts, and it's going to have significant impact in our communities.
Those stories coming up. But first, a new selection of group bike tours are coming to Indianapolis, including free tours focused on local breweries, coffee shops, and bakeries. Another tour, which is not free, will explore the history of the Indianapolis Cultural Trail. Proceeds from those tickets will go to the Cultural Trail nonprofit. The Indianapolis Cultural Trail is organizing the bike tours, which kick off in May. They'll happen once a month through this fall. Lawmakers have debated whether they should adopt controversial language this session to criminalize people sleeping on public property. WFYI's Elizabeth Gabriel reports the language was recently removed from a bill, but it could resurface.
Senate Bill 197 primarily addresses building safety. This week, lawmakers added language to it to prevent people from sleeping in public property after being warned by police, with penalties of up to 60 days in jail and a fine of up to $500. But legislators then removed the language from the bill during a conference committee. Advocates for people experiencing homelessness protested against a similar bill earlier this year. But the session isn't over yet. Some lawmakers are worried the language making it illegal to sleep on public property could still come back in a different bill. Each chamber votes on bills before sending them to the governor's desk. The last day of the session is Tuesday, April 29th. I'm Elizabeth Gabriel.
On Friday, faith leaders marched a large wooden cross down Market Street to urge lawmakers not to add similar language to a different bill. And frustrations over the homelessness crisis in Indianapolis were concentrated on one person during a recent City County Council Public Safety Committee meeting. WFYI's Jill Sheridan has more.
Andrew Merkley listened as service providers and people who have experienced homelessness asked counselors to reject his appointment as the director of the Office of Public Health and Safety. Faith leaders penned a recent letter to the council criticizing Merkley's past handling of policy and services. Testimony at the meeting pointed to a flawed winter contingency plan under Merkley's watch. Partners at Indy report that some who criticized Merkley also acknowledged the problems extend beyond a single person. The committee unanimously voted to recommend Merkley, who previously served as the city's director of homelessness policy and eviction prevention since 2021. Homelessness in Indianapolis ticked up slightly in 2024, with about 1,700 people counted during an annual assessment. I'm Jill Sheridan.
A federal judge ruled on Thursday that he would not grant a temporary restraining order to 7 international students whose visas were recently revoked by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. WFYI's Zach Castle has more.
The students attend Purdue, IU Indianapolis, and Notre Dame universities. They argue their visas were canceled without notice, and they now live in fear of deportation. They requested that the court reinstate their visas and block immigration authorities from detaining or deporting them. Judge James Patrick Hanlon of the U.S. District Court of the Southern District of Indiana ruled that the students haven't shown how they'd suffer irreparable harm from the loss of their visas. Each student has until April 25th to make the case for how they will be harmed. The judge also says just one of the 7 students resides within the court's district. The others must show why they should also be parties to the case. ACLU of Indiana represents the students. They called DHS's actions illegal. The group said it's considering next steps. I'm Zach Castle.
DHS must respond to the students' complaint by April 30th. And for our final story today, Indiana Humanities, a nonprofit that supports history and cultural projects throughout the state, is one of several local organizations recently impacted by federal funding cuts. The organization has since halted its grant distribution program. Indiana Humanities was originally allocated $1.3 million federal dollars for this fiscal year. However, the U.S. Department of Government Efficiency terminated the funding this month. Kira Amstutz is the CEO of Indiana Humanities. She says the federal grant, which made up 35 to 40% of their budget, plays a crucial role in supporting local creativity and civics.
This funding cut will have an immediate impact on our partners who use our grants to host things like preservation workshops, local history programs, author programs, and again, local cultural programs.
Amstutz says the funding cuts will be devastating, not only for the organization, but for the entire community. Since the loss of funding, the organization has stopped all grant programs except one, due to generous funding from a donor.
This is not just about Indiana Humanities. There are many organizations in Indiana who are experiencing unexpected federal funding cuts, and it's going to have significant impact in our communities.
Other local organizations impacted by the National Endowment for the Humanities funding cuts include the Indianapolis Children's Museum, the Kurt Vonnegut Museum and Library, and the Indiana Medical History Museum. Amstutz says Indiana Humanities and its national partners are looking to take legal action in the future. That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Dodlin and Zach Bundy, with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Heron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.